Fellas, today we're going to be looking at the Edge of Fate exotics, or at least some of them. Here recently, we were graciously given a sneak peek at some of the new exotic weapons and armor coming to us in Edge of Fate. Now again, unfortunately, I was sick, and so I was not able to attend the most recent capture event. However, we did get to play with a number of these exotics in a previous playtest, although we weren't allowed to capture content then, which is where I want to take a moment to give a huge shout out to Benny the Goat, as he has provided his own gameplay from the capture event of these exotics. We'll have links down below to his channel, so guys, please go and check him out. With that being said though, in today's video, we have 2 new exotic weapons to go over and 3 new exotic armor pieces, 1 for each class. So let's dive in. The first exotic weapon I wanted to cover is a brand new Arc exotic hand cannon called Graviton Spike. Now, quick side note on this, when it releases with the Edge of Fate, this will be the first new exotic hand cannon we've gotten since Hawkmoon, which was all the way back in season 12. Fellas, that is almost 5 whole years ago, which is crazy considering at one time it seemed like we were getting nothing but hand cannons. Now this comes with the exotic perk called Temporal Manipulation, which reads, press the swap between fast firing arc mode or slow firing stasis mode. Final blows and precision hits overcharge the opposing mode to enable additional effects. Now we've actually already seen a very brief snippet of gameplay of this weapon in the Edge of Fate reveal trailer. You see, during the trailer, we saw the player first getting kills with the arc version of this weapon before swapping over to stasis, which froze enemies and fired off stasis crystals. Now as for the perks, this has chambered compensator, alloyed magazine, texture grip, and then its exotic trait Temporal Anomaly. This reads while overcharge. Each mode expends a portion of overcharge for additional effects on final blows or precision hits. Arc mode calls down lightning strikes. Stasis mode creates an explosion and a formation of stasis crystals. It's a wild combination that's blending so many things together here. You can see it here in this mission. It takes 3 kills to grant stasis overcharge. You can then perform a special reload, which causes your next shots to fire a stasis projectile that explodes on impact and sends out stasis crystals almost in a similar way to Salvation's grip. Then when we get 3 kills with that, this gives us arc overcharge, which once we special reload causes hits to call down lightning, which looks and functions exactly like bolt charge. Now it looks like you can shoot 3 times with each version of the weapon before the energy runs out, which essentially leaves us with the gameplay loop of getting 3 kills and then swapping back and forth between versions, allowing yourself to freeze and then call down lightning on everything. Now this also has a slot for a deep sight socket, which is rather interesting. We don't normally see this on exotic weapons outside of maybe it being a craftable exotic, and perhaps it was the build that this gameplay came from. But whatever the case, a deep sight socket was present here. Looking at the stats though, something that stood out was the fact that this is a 150 round per minute hand cannon, making it only the second of its kind. The only other 150 we have in the game is Sunshot. And if you sit down and compare the stats side by side, Sunshot with its catalyst clearly beats out Graviton Spike almost in every category besides aim assist. Another thing that was odd is that it has 16 zoom, which is interesting because when you look at every other hand cannon in the game, whether it's legendary hand cannons, exotic hand cannons, or even blue hand cannons, they have 14 zoom. Whatever the case, guys, this is one of the most unique exotics Bungie has ever made. And this whole blending of different elements together, especially with the abilities to potentially synergize this with our subclasses. Graviton Spike is a direction I hope to see more exotics go in. Now, the next exotic weapon we have is an exotic scout rifle called Third Iteration. Now, this comes with the exotic perk Triplanar Mass Driver, which reads, fires a spread of void energy projectiles, aiming down sights, narrows the spread. Now, this comes with small bore, modified heat sink, which is interesting because this is actually a battery perk that you would expect to see on like a trace rifle or a fusion rifle. It also has some flavor text here, which says press reload to vent the core, greatly increasing the speed at which the battery recharges. And it also has a stock in that last column. Then we have its exotic trait, Amalgamation Rounds, which reads, aiming down sights for a short period without firing, compresses the spread into a single high-density projectile. Damaging a target with this shot marks them. Now, this weapon deals additional damage to marked targets. Defeating a marked target or landing a precision final blow with an amalgamation round grants invisibility and true sight. Yes, you heard that right. Invisibility and and True Sight. Now, taking a look at the weapon in action, you can see how your reticle at default looks like this, and if you fire, you're actually going to hit 3 separate times, like a shotgun, for example. But when you aim down sights, your reticle will slowly change until it forms this triangle. This is the amalgamation round, which does more damage and will mark the targets that you hit. Now, the mark you apply buffs the weapon's damage against that target. For example, you see the first shot, it deals 752 damage. Then when marked, this went up to 977, which is a 30% increase in damage. So quite substantial here, guys. But as the perk states, you can essentially just chain Invis plus True Sight forever, so long as you are either getting precision kills with the charge shots or just killing a marked enemy. Now, from the looks of things, this could potentially be crazy in things like PvP. Dude, Invis is already busted in PvP. Now you have a way to easily get this on top of True Sight, and you can do it with any class. That's right, hunters. You're about to get a taste of your own medicine. And this isn't the first time we've seen True Sight at work with certain weapons. Game Cakes, for instance, loves using Slayer's Fang inside of PvP simply because of the True Sight that it grants. We'll have to wait and see what the damage numbers look like inside of PvP though. But for a primary weapon to turn you invisible and grant you True Sight and the ability to have marking capabilities, I'm getting straight up OG One-Eye Mask vibes from this thing. Now, this thing also has an exotic canvas, and we actually know what this one does. It reads that precision final blows with the amalgamation rounds will cause the target to detonate into a weakening blast. Fellas, are you bricked yet? We're talking crazy synergies with that weakened blast, which of course is going to feed into True Sight even more so. And on paper, this does sound very similar to Demoralize, which is a void perk found on a couple different weapons. The main thing I want to compare to these two side by side is what is that radius? I would assume the weaken percentage is the same, but still something I can't wait to get my hands on to test for ourselves. Now, with the exotic weapons out of the way, we can start breaking down our new armor pieces. Let's start with our Titans first. We have a new pair of exotic gauntlets called Melas Panoplia. Good chance we're wrecking that name, but fellas, it finally happened. Bungie finally gave us the ability to recall our throwing hammer. This exotic comes with the exotic trait Forge Master, which reads, collecting a fire sprite or rapid solar final blows make you a Forge Master, allowing you to recall your throwing hammer. After impacting a target, recall your hammer at full intensity to perform a perfect recall, causing an explosion of forge slag. Perfect recalls and collecting fire sprites extends your time as a Forge Master. Now, these seem to solve one of the main issues with bonk builds as a whole, and that's the fact that we have to go and manually pick up our hammer like some damn Neanderthal. It's 2025. I want to be able to look at my hammer and make that thing come back to me like Thor. And without a doubt, Hammer Titans have really seen a drop off since bonk was nerfed so long ago. Here with this exotic though, you can see it all in action. When we get 3 rapid solar kills, the Forge Master buff appears on the left-hand side. This will last for 12 seconds, but the countdown doesn't actually start until you throw your first hammer. Then when we actually throw our hammer, you'll notice that the melee icon turns into the same icon for Threaded Spike when it's ready to be retrieved. And upon pressing melee again, this will recall the hammer to us, straight up like Thor or even Kratos and their recall abilities. Now, each time your hammer is recalled to you, there's going to be a slight cooldown before you can throw it again immediately. Now, this actually seems to be much faster than our current throwing hammer cooldown. Also, each time you get the hammer back, this will grant you cure. Now, do keep in mind that when your hammer is being recalled, it can still hit enemies and deal damage on the way back, which is amazing. And I really want to see this inside of PvP. Now, repeated hammer kills do not refresh the timer, as this can seemingly only be done with 3 rapid solar kills, picking up a fire sprite, or when getting a perfect recall. Now, this can be done when you recall the hammer when it glows like this. It also has an audio cue. And if done correctly, this will cause the hammer to explode in a small radius around where it is recalled, while also giving you 3 seconds to your Forge Master timer. So without a doubt, guys, there's a bit of a skill gap here. And something I definitely want to look at is a comparison in damage between this and, say, Worm Gods or Synthoceps. Since if you're using this new exotic, you don't have access to the melee damage buffs that you would usually pair with these builds. So the question is, will that explosion damage be enough to make up for that loss of extra damage from either of those exotics? Or does that even matter to you? Is the ability to just recall your hammer too damn cool? Yeah, it's pretty cool. I'm not sure if it's going to completely revive bonk Titans, but this is definitely something we've been asking for forever now. Next up, we have our Warlocks. You guys are also getting exotic gauntlets, these being focused on solar. These are called Eunoia. One of those is correct. I don't know which one.
Eunoia.
Now they come with the exotic perk Console's Pitch. This perk reads that Hellion projectiles deal increased damage the further they travel, eventually fracturing into scorching shrapnel. Look man, I'm not a Warlock main, but it really does annoy me that some of the coolest exotics Bungie ever comes up with is just freely handed out to Warlocks. Now this perk description sounds very similar to say something like Full Court on GLs, but even cooler. They deal more damage the further the projectile travels, but the most interesting part is the fact that it fractures into scorching shrapnel. Taking a look at this in the shooting range, at base, Hellion was dealing 216 damage to these servitors. Then with the exotic equipped, this impact went up to 249, plus the damage from the shrapnel, which looks to deal somewhere around an extra 18 damage per hit. Now the damage seems to reach a cap depending on the distance traveled as well. For example, you see here that the projectile hits the servitors closest and only deal 226 damage, but every hit after that past a certain point would always hit for 249. Now at first I assumed that the shrapnel would be super erratic and even possibly miss the target a lot, but luckily it seems that the tracking on it is pretty aggressive. And I say luckily because inside of PvP, this one might be a bit annoying. Hell, base Hellion is already annoying. Now you can see it here, once it splits, the shrapnel will find any target close enough and just go right for them. This seems like a great exotic to pair with solo Warlocks. Hellion is one of my most used aspects when I play Warlock, and that's something that I utilize in both PvE and PvP. And I think current Hellion already does a ton of damage on its own, especially if you build into it with a strictly solar subclass with things like Ember of Ashes to make those ignitions happen even faster. Without a doubt, guys, this combination for both PvP and PvE looks like it's going to be hell to deal with.
Oh, brother, this guy stinks!
Now lastly, we have Hunters, with what may be the strongest sounding exotic we have seen, at least on paper. We have a new exotic chest piece called Moirai, or Moirai. This comes with the exotic perk Web Catcher, which reads, Threaded Spike can bounce to tangles, detonating them and returning immediately. Tangles detonated by Threaded Spike are rewoven and retrieved by it. Catches without a tangle refund extra melee energy. Unfortunately, we don't actually have any gameplay of this to show off, but we wanted to quickly talk about how nasty this may end up being. So essentially, you can hit one of your tangles with your Threaded Spike, which will not only detonate it, but on top of that, when the Threaded Spike returns, this will also bring you back a tangle. Now immediately my mind went to how busted this could be with the rolling maelstrom aspect, as destroying tangles essentially unleashes these strand Beyblades, emitting unraveling projectiles when defeating enemies. This aspect and Strand Hunter as a whole has been one of my most used subclasses and one of the most submitted subclasses in build battles, and it's especially useful in things like Onslaught, where you just have waves and waves of enemies coming at you. What makes this especially disgusting with this exotic is the idea of having two of them going at any given time. And even more so than that, this is definitely the one we'll be keeping our eyes on, guys, because as you see here in the artifact mods that we're going to be getting, we've got some pretty strand heavy mods with artifact perks like Threaded Blast making a return. Things are going to get crazy with tangles, and Moirai is going to take full advantage of it. So guys, those are the exotics that have been given to us and shown to us. Big shout out to Benny again for supplying the gameplay. Also big shout out to Bungie for also bridging the gap and supplying gameplay as well. I appreciate it very much. Let me know in the comments below what you think, guys. Of course, there's going to be more exotics when the expansion rolls out. Seems like Bungie's rolling in with more secrets in this coming up expansion. And if you haven't checked out our video on our experience with Edge of Fate, you can check that out down below. Well, fellas and ladies, thank you all for coming and watching. And as always,
slap that like button like your mama told you right.